Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. Excited to have our parent coach here for the Professional Badass, our CEO, Allie Ryan Coaching. Yes, that's her name, Allie Ryan, and she's back with us today to talk more about the work she's doing. And we're excited to have her back. Always great topics, always so thorough and eager to help us. Today, we're going to be cultivating some meaningful friendships and so much more. Allie, welcome back. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. And thanks for that sweet introduction. I love
Always.
hearing that I'm thorough. It's
You
like, what a compliment.
are. You are very thorough and kind and organized. So
Well,
tell us,
I thank you.
a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, elder hospice care nurse turned business owner. I love how our directions in life sometimes take us into wonderful places. Extreme burnout in nursing helped me see that. Well, actually, seeking coaching because of burnout really helped me see that I was doing a lot of coaching already. And so I've opened this wonderful business that helps families learn how to engage in ways that are more meaningful and lose the perfectionism, get clear on why they have some resentment, understand their own patterns to shift and have, a little bit more meaningful and purposeful life. It's something that is really important to me is people living authentic lives. And usually that means undoing and unlearning a lot of the not so helpful things that we picked up along the way, because there's lots of things that can contribute to why we are the
Oh,
way
Allie.
we are. We have some
Perfect.
choices over a lot of those things.
All right. Well, you just broke up. I got you back. We're all good. And
Oh,
for how do we
okay.
contact you before we start today's conversation?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you can easily find me on AllieRyanCoaching.com, ALIRYAN coaching.com. There's a contact button, there's connection call buttons. There's also Instagram, Allie_Ryan_coaching.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So let's talk about some steps in cultivating those meaningful friendships.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think first it kind of is just getting clear on, being honest about it's really hard to make friendships as adults, right? Like in school, it's so easy when we're kids, we're just around people all the time. And then as we get older, after we're out of college and once we move on to our business, having
Hmm.
a career, and having kids, it can actually be really hard. And so a lot of folks that I'm meeting now are experiencing a lot of loneliness. And I thought this would just be a really good topic to discuss of how do we create meaningful friendships as adults. And so
So true.
yeah. So really it first starts with being willing to have authentic connection. And really what that means is being willing to share your true self with others, including your vulnerabilities, including your little quirks, we all have them, but letting that be okay because the more genuine that we can be with others, the more that we attract people that like who we are as our true selves. And as we're more vulnerable, we actually open that up for other people to also be their vulnerable selves, which is really what we're wanting.
It is. Yep. Open, honest. But all right, you got to also have the authentic connection, be a good listener.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So active listening is part of that. Cultivating the art of active listening. And so what this sometimes looks like is just, even with our conversation right now, hearing what you're saying, understanding that I get to listen instead of just waiting to talk and share my part. I'm actually listening to what the other person is saying. And, sometimes that looks like rephrasing. Sometimes that looks like just asking an open-ended question. But by listening attentively, we not only strengthen our bonds, but we also create a space for deeper conversations and mutual understanding, which goes back to that authenticity. We don't just necessarily want to talk about the weather, right? Like for some people, sure. But I think if we're looking at developing those deeper connections, we want to be talking and listening and sharing that opportunity for when we can talk about things that might be a little deeper or more vulnerable, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but it can be a little challenging.
We have to also be consistent. You mentioned it's a process
Yeah.
and investment is important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love looking at, I mean, I think a bank analogy is one of my favorite ones where, in order to save money, we have to consistently save. In order to build friendships, we have to consistently be in touch. Maintaining regular contact is really important, whether that's through phone calls, texts, consistent dinners, or even consistent times that we're doing book club, for instance. But meaningful connections are cultivated over time through shared experiences and mutual support. And the only way that that happens is if we're doing that on a consistent basis, just like how we're saving on a consistent basis. We want to be doing that in the area of friendships as well.
Got it. And what are some things that can really affect or impact, I should say, our ability to connect? What could be going on?
Yeah, well, there's a ton of things, but the things that I thought that would be helpful to talk about today, fear of vulnerability, and then compare and despair, as well as judgment. Fear of vulnerability can really hinder your ability to connect authentically when we're afraid to show our true self or to share how we're really feeling. We're really creating a little bit of a barrier to genuine connection. And so the way that I like to teach people to do this is to view your vulnerability as a strength, something to be proud of rather than a weakness. And so it's shifting some perspective there, but allowing yourself to be seen and understood and know that true connection requires us to be open and honest with others. So yeah, really viewing it as like a unique gift that you have rather than something to be ashamed of.
Wow. Okay, got it. Thank you for that. And that fear of vulnerability. Such a so hard. I think we all are faced with that. You don't want to be judged, you don't want to feel, but we've all been there and shamed, which is sad, but we can get through it, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think it sort of depends on the situation. I think
Okay.
context is such an important thing here, right? Like when we look at maybe, jobs, like I can just think the first thing that comes to mind when you said that of being judged and shamed, sometimes those have actually happened in jobs from my boss, from different bosses. This is thinking of a long time
Oh
ago,
yeah.
or teachers, right? Like little things. One sentence that someone said 20 years ago that sticks with us for years. And so letting it be that, like, yes, that might have happened, that shut us down, or we may think that something was wrong with us. For me, I think of this art class, and my teacher said something really rude. And for a long time, that really shut my artistic side down. But realizing that I gave one person so much power over me and really looking at, is it worth that? And so there's sort of this willingness to let the past be the past and to let our adult self show up, to be vulnerable. You mentioned something really good, which is the comparison and the judgment, which is another
Hmm.
big hindrance to connection. And, so much of, I think, where we are at these days, especially if we have a family, is that we are, I mean, gosh, even in the age of social media, we're really stuck in this compare and despair where we hop
Yep.
on this phone and we can see all these things where we don't measure up. And
Yep.
so my invitation to people is stop comparing yourself to others. You are your own reference point, right? It can be so easy to look at our neighbors and be like, well, they have a bigger house, or they have this, or they have that. But we don't actually know what's going on in their lives. We're just taking something face value, right? A picture perfect,
Yeah.
edited picture on Instagram, or seeing a slice of someone at a time, but we don't actually know what's going on with them. And so really shifting that perspective to, we only should be comparing ourselves to ourselves, no one
True.
else.
True. You're right. Well, it's always hard to do that. But it's also just remind everyone how we contact you while we continue about cultivating meaningful relationships. Tell
Yeah,
us
absolutely.
website, phone number, social media, how we can connect with Ali Ryan.
Yes. So easiest way to connect with me, Instagram. My handle is Ali_Ryan_coaching. That's ALIRYAN. And on my website, www.aliryancoaching.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Where'd we go? I
Absolutely.
lost my notes. There was still more on our sheet, but right now it looks like I disconnected the email. So what was next on the sheet?
Yeah. Well, I think judgment can be a big reason why people
Hmm.
often will say, but like, I don't want to,
Hmm.
I'm so afraid of people judging me. And I think what is really important to look at with judgment is what we think other people are thinking about us is actually what we are already thinking about ourselves. And so this can be really interesting for people when they think about, well, I don't want to connect with other people because maybe they'll judge, like for me, for a long time, I was like, they'll judge that I've been divorced. Well, guess what? I'm already judging that I've been divorced. It's not about other people. It's my own experience of that I'm judging. And so what this looks at is sort of shifting what we think other people are perceiving about us and really get clear on like, what are we judging and shaming about ourselves that we actually can let go, right? Or even just have an awareness that we have a sensitivity about, because
Mhm.
it's not about other people, it's about our own self-judgments.
Gosh, it's horrible. Let me just take this example. I mean,
Mhm.
the past few months, everybody in the world judging and criticizing over Kate Middleton, right? Princess
Mm.
Catherine. And it's like, who are you to even judge? You don't even know her. And I mean, it was horrible, right? People were saying mean
Oh my
things,
gosh.
everywhere.
Yes.
This is worldwide. And then for her to come out and say she's struggling with cancer. I mean, I
That
just
broke
hope the
my heart.
criticism stop, right? But it's like everyone is dealing with their own business. Like her business, private life is like not everyone's life. And it's a perfect example of
Yes.
how here we are judging people and we should not. And I hope everyone has shut their mouths. I haven't paid attention to the news the past few days, but I'm sure some critic will come out and say, oh, maybe she doesn't have cancer or whatever it is. I hope the criticism stopped. I don't know what's happening in the news right now, to be honest, but it's just such a shame that someone like that had to go.
Yes.
Anyone goes through that, but especially her with the
Totally.
whole
Yeah.
world.
Well, and isn't it fascinating? Like I thought about that when I saw that news, and I mean my heart just broke because like you said, like all these conspiracies were some of the worst stuff. Like, she's her and Prince William, just some of the nastiest
And
things.
so
And like you said, for it
mean.
to come out, yes, for it actually to come out that she's really struggling
And
and to think about what she must be going through. I know you as a parent too, like how will you talk to your kids about something like that? And what she must be going through. And for it to come out, yeah, I really did feel a lot of anger there too. And I think what am reminded of, something that I learned a long time ago, which is every single one of us has a struggle that we don't talk about.
okay,
And I think it's
you're
very
right.
true.
Hmm.
We don't often hop on here and, I'm not sharing with you the deepest, darkest parts of my life. Why would I? Right? Like we all have the things that are going on, which is why I think there's like this balance between developing and cultivating authentic friendships, but also knowing that we are each going through stuff that we don't necessarily want to talk about. And that doesn't mean that something is wrong with us. It doesn't mean that there's anything, terrible even necessarily happening. It's just, we don't, I just think what it comes down to is we are so busy thinking about other people and what's happening with other people that we stop to think that we're often going through our own
Yep.
similar things, and like letting that empathy sort of go both ways, right, of giving ourselves that understanding and privacy and letting other people have that too, because we don't know what battles people are facing. We just don't.
Well,
Such an important.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, thank you for sharing that. And how can we improve our own judging and judgment? And yeah, because it's so sad. We all do judge right
We
away.
do.
It's like you're first to criticize when you see someone, you judge that book by the cover. And I'm trying to teach my kids not to. And I feel like it's
Yeah.
getting somewhere. Like
Mhm.
to be honest, I mean, I'm 46. So my father was very prejudiced against African American people. And I grew up saying, I didn't understand this. I said, I have a friend who's African American. And she said, no,
Yeah.
I'm black. Oh, he's fine, black. But I try to be, respectful. No, no. And
Yeah.
he was always so judgmental. Now he is 76 and he's learned to be like, I was so dumb back then to be so judgmental of someone's color of the skin. I said, yes. I said, well, me too. And I was just happened to be an open person. And then somehow I learned not to be that way. Usually you turn out like your parents. And then here I am now with my kids. And my middle son, he's my brown friend. We have friends all different colors. It's so cute. So I'm hoping like that stigma of like race, so many other things will slowly, shortly start to get better. And I think they are. I hope so because judging someone for the way they look or sound or what they have or don't have, it's horrific. Always put yourself in that person's body because we've all been judged. You don't want to be that way.
Totally. Yeah. I love how it sounds like what you're doing is you're just opening up these conversations with your kids, which is such an
Everything.
important thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's so important. And what always strikes me is like, I think it's really important to remember that we grow up with biases, right? Like
Yep.
you mentioned your dad, and what he grew up in was, he grew up in a time where there was racial segregation.
Yep.
There was actual like people of color had to go this way, white people had to go this way. Then there's sexism and the
Mm-hmm.
biases with that. And so there's so many different biases that we I mean, that's what our brain does. So what I
Yep.
like to help people understand is like our brains judge. Our brains are categorical machines. That's just part of how they are. There's also biases, right? Like depending on where we grow up,
So
who we grew
true.
up around, like you said, the
Yep.
modeling that we get, we're going to have certain judgments. And so there's nothing wrong with that, but just being willing to look at it, examine it, and like you said, take a look at really like, what does this bias, like, is it supporting me? Is it helping me? And often just seeing that generalizations, especially that we grow up in, are just that. They're just generalizations, and they are not necessarily true, right? That's kind of the second piece of this
Yep.
is there's a lot of stereotypes around. I mean, gosh, there's stereotypes around women, even single women. I know both of you and I are that. There's stereotypes around people like African Americans, and knowing that like so much of those stereotypes
Mm.
are they're not true, and they're actually really painful. And then not only that, but the person that's oppressed and marginalized can be actually that can be self-inflicted in terms of internalized in a
Yep.
way that can be really negative. So I love the way that you said just questioning, just looking at like how is this helping me or not. And I think another thing with judgment is the level of which that we judge others is a signal of how much we're judging ourselves. And that's one thing that I actually had to look
Mm-hmm.
at is when I was really, this was when I was a lot younger before I discovered coaching and just a lot of the self-development world. But I was such a self-critical person. So of course I was, and especially around my body, because I think women, we grow up and we have to look a certain way. So for me, what I often looked at was, I was judging other people, but it was more from a place of my own self-judgment. And so the more that I started creating and practicing self-compassion, understanding, and letting it be okay that I was an imperfect person, it was almost became this by proxy almost my understanding of other people just started happening so much more naturally because I wasn't in a place of putting myself in that kind of that what do I want to call it almost? I mean, it was almost like the interrogation line where it's like, I don't have to do that anymore, right? And so I think that practice of just releasing that judgment towards myself naturally just releases that judgment towards others. And just remembering we are all fighting battles in our own ways and letting it be okay.
Yep.
And another thing that I like to talk about is, you know, judgment and curiosity do not live in the same home,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, right? Where we're thinking from a place of judgment, we're protecting ourselves, we're creating the other, we're separating ourselves from something. Whereas if we're curious, we're open, we're intrigued, we're open to learning. And this really can help shift our judgment into more curiosity. And it's a practice. Our brains are often going to be in a place of judgment and negative biases
Yep.
because that's just how they are. And this is sort of the world that we're living at this time. And at the same time, we get to practice a little bit of curiosity. It just starts with just almost asking a question and just being like, oh, I wonder what they're going through, rather than that person isn't doing what I need them to do. And they always do this, right? It's just shifting into like, I wonder what's going on with
Yeah.
them.
Well, thank you so much. And let's also just remind everyone how we can contact you again, Allie.
Absolutely. AllieRyanCoaching.com, ALIRYAN, as well as Instagram.com/Allie_Ryan_coaching.
Perfect. Thanks again. And today, if you are just joining us and tuning in, we're talking about the cultivating meaningful relationships. And you mentioned it's time to start practicing and to strengthen these social skills. So, can we talk more about intentional gratitude and appreciation?
Yes. I love how you said cultivating social skills. I think what's something that's coming up that reminded me of is how in this post-pandemic world, we are all being faced with the need to like get out of our comfort zones again and almost forgetting all of these social skills that we know that we have. And so one of them is cultivating gratitude and appreciation. And this is so easy. Really, what it looks like is just taking time every day to express gratitude and appreciation for the
Mhm.
relationships that you already have, whether that's the nice person that you see at the corner store where you grab your coffee, to your friends that you already have, to your neighbor who brought the newspaper to your door. It's these really small things. and thinking about the ways that these people that are in your life enrich your life. It can be so easy to let the person who didn't pick up the dog poop on the sidewalk get the worst of your day, or the person who
Yep.
is tailgating you or cut you off in traffic, to take you off of to totally forget. But I think it can be so easy just to tap back into that gratitude and appreciation for the people in your life that are there, that are making effort, that are genuine connections in your life. And this act of gratitude not only strengthens your existing connections, but it allows new opportunities for meaningful friendships as well.
Well, also, just curious about gratitude. People don't really understand sometimes how that works, how some people journal, some people, what does that mean? Obviously I know what gratitude means, but how do you start doing it? And
Yeah,
could you
yeah,
share some of the
yeah,
techniques that you can do
totally,
this? And
totally. This
thanks.
started for me when I realized that I was in a place of just looking at how terrible and like, my boss doesn't do what I want and my kids don't do what I want. Like, it can be so easy to get stuck in that. And what I realized is we can have this simple act. This is what I started practicing, is just look outside and see something that's pretty out there. And so for me, I was like, this is the silliest thing ever, but I did it. I looked outside and I was like, wow, there's like spring blossoms on this tree. And wow, like look at that cute little cat. And like, wow, like I'm really grateful for this soft sweater. Right. And so just for me, I think it can be this very slight shift. It doesn't have to be, prayer. It doesn't even necessarily have to be, like you said, this deep gratitude, but it's just appreciating the things that we already have and letting that be small, like letting it be like, oh yeah, like I love this coffee cup I have. The coffee in here is really nice. Like
Yes, appreciate giving gratitude to my water.
yeah, like hydration, right? Because I think that so often we can look
Hmm.
at gratitude as these big, huge things. And
Yep.
in reality, sometimes we can't find those big things, but we can be grateful for the small things. And that matters because honestly, I think we live in a world where we take a lot of things for granted, right? And it's so much of the world that we're caught up in. But at the same time, there are things like I said, I'm really appreciative of this coffee this morning.
Oh my
Sometimes I wake
goodness.
up and I don't have coffee here because my kids
Yep.
drink it all. So, letting it be like, oh yeah, I'm really grateful for this. I'm really grateful for the snow outside. I don't necessarily love the cold weather, but like, hey, we need more moisture in Colorado. I'm grateful for that. And so I am kind of playful when it comes to this because I think sometimes we can take it so serious and think that it needs to be these big things, but it doesn't. It can be really small. And I think a lot of these habits of gratitude and even cultivating meaningful friendships, it all can start with really small things.
Got it. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And in our last few minutes together, how did you want to kind of sum up the conversation for today with, everything that we've addressed today here?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think to sum it up, I think what I would like for people to walk away with is knowing that connection is such an important piece in our life, and we have lost connection, especially because of between the pandemic, between the social media world, looking at how important connections and friendship are. Things that can be helpful, authentic
Hmm.
connection, connecting often with your authentic self, the skill of cultivating active listening, and knowing that in order to cultivate friendships, we have to show up consistently. Even if that looks like once a month, letting that be something that you include in your life and that you make time for. This is something that is worth your time, and your effort and it's something that really matters. And knowing that there is definitely a fear of vulnerability that can come up, or even just the judgment, and knowing that those are things that we can work through, we can get past. And this is what I help people do all the time, right? Letting it be okay that sometimes we have fear of vulnerability, but letting that
Hmm.
be that that's actually what makes you a unique, awesome person.
It truly does. Great way to look at it. All right, Allie Ryan Coaching. Let's talk about when we reach out to you.
Yeah.
We can have a little conversation. We could see if you're going to fit. Now you're in Colorado, but you're working with people all over the world. And I know you have the connection call,
Mhm.
and we got to bring up the quiz. You got to take the quiz on our website.
My
This is,
quiz. Yes, my quiz is hilarious and funny. So
do I
hop on.
hate my kids? And she doesn't mean it that way. You'll see.
No,
Uh,
no, of course not. No,
and
really, the point of that quiz is just to look at what areas of parenting are you resenting the most? Is it the fact that
yeah,
you're isolated and you don't have enough community? Is it that your kids depend on you too much? Is it that you're struggling with wanting to control the way that they're behaving? That quiz really helps you understand what the struggle might be.
so
And then
true.
you can take that quiz and come to me. We'll talk about it. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I do sell coaching, but I think for me, it's more knowing that you have a resource. I can hook you up with resources that will be supportive to you and your kids, and know that you have someone in your corner that can teach you ways to have set better boundaries, to put yourself back in the priority list, and to have more meaningful relationships by teaching you communication skills and conflict resolution. So easily find me on AllieRyanCoaching.com. And yep, all things family dynamics and moving through the complexity of the world of how we maintain meaningful relationships.
Great. Thank you so much for being here, Allie Ryan Coaching, and we'll hopefully talk again soon. Thanks for being, like I said, so thorough. You are very organized. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jill.
It makes for a better flow of the show. Not that we could just not talk. We could just talk, but thank you. Always appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All
Hope
right.
you have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
I will. Same here. Enjoy. And to all of our listeners, viewers, stay tuned. We will be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.